In this exercise, we're going to work on the rolled hems. We have 4 rolled hems we're going to do, but 2 pattern pieces. So I have 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 inch on this pattern piece, and 3/8 and 1/2 inch on this pattern piece. These between the notches, this is the area of your rolled hems that we're actually going to be sewing. So the rolled hem is an important finishing and design detail. You often see these on pants, casual pants like jeans or 5 pockets. Also, you will also see it in evening dresses and also for design details like ruffles and other things like that. So we need to cut one of each of these out of our fabric. So I've got some fabric here, and I'm going to lay this out single layer. And it looks like I have a selvage here, so I know that my grain lines are going to be parallel to this. Now on these pattern pieces, the information is actually going, it looks like in the straight grain as to the other pattern pieces that you've seen already. But because the grain line is going this way, I can't lay it this way. This is the cross grain of the fabric, which is perpendicular to the selvage, and the selvage is parallel to the straight grain. So we have to lay the pattern pieces this way. The straight grain arrow goes along with the straight grain of the fabric. So I'm going to get this laid out here, and I'm going to bring it in a little bit, stretch this a little bit because the fabric still looks a little bit off grain. Refer to your fabric exercise to put it back on grain. So I've got this laid out here. I'm going to use a few weights to hold it down, and then I'll trace around. Now after you trace, don't forget your notches. The notches on this pattern is very important because this is the height of what the fabric needs to fold up and roll into. So now that I've got that one done, I can actually take my other pattern piece, and since it's a separate piece, I don't have to remove this pattern piece. I can just move these over to weight it down. Whoops. And trace off this pattern piece. Again, don't forget to go back and mark your notches for these pieces. And I'm going to split this one right away. And get each of these cut out. Okay, so now that we have our fabric ready, I'm going to mark the face side. So that's going to be my face side, and now I'm going to carefully clip about 1/4 inch in each one of these notches. And the hem allowance will always be marked with a notch on the pattern. All right. So there are two samples. Again, we're going to have 4 hem widths, and it's the finished hem widths. On this one, I have the 1/8 and 1/4 finished hem widths, and on this one, I have the 3/8 and the 1/2 inch finished hem widths. So let's go to the ironing board. Okay, so we're ready to prepare for our rolled hems. Now there are 4 widths of the finished rolled hem. So we have finished widths of 1/2 inch, 3/8 inch, 1/4 inch, and 1/8 inch. And the larger sizes are for, obviously the larger width is for the larger sizes. So we're going to do that one first. So this is for the larger size. Our notches here indicate for the width of the hem. But this is actually going to be rolled, so the finished width is going to be half of that. So if this is 1 inch, this will end up being a 1/2 inch. The width of this from the notch to the edge is 3/4 of an inch, so the finished width on this will be 3/8. So to prepare these, we need to press the hem allowance up. So this is the face side. I'm going to flip it over. And the notches indicate where we should be folding. So that's the width. So we would fold this up. And if you had a larger piece or larger garment, you could use your ruler to actually mark off where the 1 inch would be. But we're going to use our eye. I want you to start getting used to using your eye for what 1 inch would be. And of course, this is actually small enough to actually kind of finger press it down here. We're going to press it with the iron. All right, and now let's do the other one. I'm going to do the same thing. Press it up on that notch. Now, even though I said this is 1 inch or 3/4 inch, it doesn't really matter because we're actually going to be folding at the notch regardless. So whatever that hem allowance is supposed to be, it will always be indicated by the height of the notch from the edge of the fabric. So there I'm all pressed up. Now, I know that most people will have the tendency to want to actually roll this in like this and press it again. And of course, you could do that if that would help you, but we're not going to do that. We're actually going to do the rolling of it while we're in the machine. So pressing it up this way is fine, but we're going to practice rolling it in the machine without any pins. So let's get the other widths pressed up. Again, I'm going to fold at the notches, kind of eye that across it, and then I'm going to press it down. And our final one, this one is pretty small, so we may have to go little by little. We may not be able to press it all the way down, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go little by little. The total width of this press up here is 1/4 inch. This may actually be our most challenging of the 4. Okay, so now I've got all of my hem allowances pressed up for both. Let's take them over to the machine and sew them up. Okay, we're ready to actually sew these hems in, and we're going to start with the widest one, and then we'll go to the next largest one. And what we're going to do, you saw me at the press mat kind of fold this in. You see where the crease line is here. We're going to take this raw edge and fold it in to match that crease line, and then we're going to fold it over one more time. And then right here, on this edge right here, this is where our stitch line will be. It's close to that edge as you can sew. So again, you're going to take your fabric, and you see your original press line here. That's your 1 inch. This is the widest one. And then we're going to fold that cut edge to match that folded edge. And then we're going to fold it over one more time. Now, the reason I didn't want you to press this and have it nice and pressed is that most likely, more often than not, you're not going to be able to do that. So I wanted you to practice in being able to create that fold on the fly, basically. So we've got this folded over, and look at this other end. It's not actually folded yet. I'm actually going to fold that as I go. So now if you were actually doing a hem like a pant, it would be in a circle, and you would be starting at one part, and then you wouldn't be able to fold. You'd only be able to fold that as you get up closer to that area. So I'm just going to fold this beginning part, and I'm going to lift the presser foot, and I'm going to put it here in the machine. Now, if you were doing it in a circle with a hem, you wouldn't have the issue that we're having here, is starting at an edge. We don't want to start here at the very edge. We want to come in probably about 1/4 of an inch, and we can go back and clean that up later. If we started right here at the very edge, the needle would actually push that fabric down into the machine, and then it would cause some problems, and you would have to probably cut the fabric out. So we don't want that to happen. So we're going to push the fabric in, and we're going to eye this edge, push this in about 1/4 inch past the needle, and then I'm going to put the needle down into the fabric. And if you can look, I know you can't see it probably in the camera, but if you can look under the presser foot, you can see where exactly the needle is going on the top of your hem. And I'll let the presser foot down. And then I'm not going to backstitch. The reason I'm not going to backstitch is because my fabric may be too close to the edge of the fabric might be too close to the needle, and I might actually push that fabric into the hole. So I'm going to come back and I'll show you how you can clean that up. If this, again, were in the circle, it wouldn't matter because we would be sewing right over that. And we'll probably do that at one of the more advanced sewing techniques. So I'm going to go ahead and sew. And I'm watching this go in, and I know looks like I was going pretty fast. I'm still riding right here on the edge. And I'm coming here, I'm going to actually turn the rest of this in. You want to make sure that the width here is pretty consistent, and where you're stitching is consistent. Okay, so now I'm coming here. Now I can backstitch at this point because I'm coming up to it. So that's what I'll do. But not too close to the edge. And we'll go ahead and take this out. Clip it, right? So here is our finished hem. That's our stitch. And I'm going to clip these extra threads. I clipped the extra threads on this end. Okay. Let me show you that so you can see it. So up close here, you can see how close I got to the edge. That looks very nice. We want it as close to that 1/2 inch from the edge as possible. So now I said at the beginning I started in quite a bit here, 1/4 inch. I'm going to put the needle in probably right about here, and then I'm going to sew to the end to kind of close that up. Now you probably won't encounter this in the industry, but just so we can kind of clean up our sample, that's what I'm going to do. So we'll start here. I'm going to put my needle, before I put my presser foot down, I'll put the needle right into my original stitching, and then as I sew up to it, I can backstitch. Okay. All right, so here is the finished hem. Let me show you that up close here. I just started right a few stitches right on top of that, and then I finished to the end. Now it's different when you come up to the end, because when you sew up to the end, and I'll kind of mimic this here. If you sew this way up to the end and then backstitch, the difference is that you have fabric back here that the feed dogs are holding on to. I don't really have fabric up here a whole lot. That the feed dogs are very shallow here, and they're not going to actually grab onto the fabric to actually move it the way you need to, especially if the needle right at the beginning is pushing that fabric down into that hole. I don't really have that problem when I do it this way, because the larger amount of the feed dogs are on the back here of the presser foot, and so I can sew up here and backstitch without a problem. So now I'm going to do the same here, except it's every hem we're doing from now on is getting smaller than the original. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to fold that cut edge to the pressed line, right? And you can finger press it a little bit if that helps. And then I'm going to put here in just past that needle about 1/4 inch. And I'm not going to backstitch. Let me put the needle down here right on that edge. And then I will sew. And as we go along, we're going to turn this fabric in. Coming up to our backstitch. Okay, and I've got the same thing going on here. I'm going to come back, finish that little edge. Now, what these hems will help you identify while you have them in your notebook is what width of hem, if you're going to do a rolled hem, what width of hem that would be appropriate for a garment that you would be designing. So if you're unsure about the width of the hem that you want to use, you can always come back to your notebook and actually look at these for as far as the width and how you think it would work for your design. Okay, so these two are completed. We have the half inch finished, and we have the the half inch finished and the 3/8 finished here. And let's have a look at it, what it looks like on the face side. And we'll probably give these a final press, but we have 2 more hems to do. So the next hem size is, this is a half inch. We cut this a half inch, but when we finish it, it will be 1/4 inch. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn that cut edge, and this one might be a little bit challenging. So I'm just kind of flatten this and then turn this over. That's pretty tiny. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing. Put this up past the needle about 1/4 inch. Right on that edge of that fold. This one's going to be a little bit more challenging because as we get here, it's a little bit tinier. I'm going to get this sewn a little bit. And then I'm going to take this again, roll it, and turn it over again. And then sometimes on these little smaller pieces that likes to poke out here, so what I do is I take my fingernail and I just kind of run it underneath as it's just kind of being rolled under there. And I just kind of smooth that edge underneath. And then I can continue to sew. Right, and we gotta finish this, roll this last part under. Use my fingernail just to get it rolled under just a little bit more. We're coming up to the end, so I'm going to get ready to backstitch. Clip. Finish this edge off. This one is a little bit more difficult. I'm going to hold this with my, just to get it in there. And I'm going to need to backstitch. If you can't manage this backstitch, that's perfectly okay. As long as you have most of your hem done for your reference. That will be a good idea. And look what happened here. Something happened with my bobbin thread. I may not have had my needle all the way up in the position, or I may have not been holding the threads back here when it started. That's what can cause that. So I might just kind of pick that out a little bit later. So now we have a very challenging rolled hem. So this last one is going to be challenging, probably even for me. So I have cut this hem width is 1/4 inch. So the finish is going to be 1/8 of an inch. And how, now you could press this up to there and use the iron and keep it pressed down. But the problem is it's so tiny that we're gonna have a hard time getting this through and getting it started. So what I'm gonna do is in the middle here, I'm going to stitch about a 1/2 inch. Hold these threads behind it so that we don't get a bunch of thread underneath. And I'm going to stitch roughly about a 1/2 inch length, not a whole lot. Whoops, I almost did a dangerous thing there. I almost cut these threads. We don't want to cut those. So don't cut those threads, because we're actually going to use these to pull this through the machine. So we are going to turn this. Let's see if you can see this in the camera. So I'm going to turn this, press that, turn it one more time till we get that 1/8 of an inch hem, and we'll be able to continue turning this. The important thing is getting this through the machine. So I've got that finger pressed that down. I'm going to take these and I'm going to pull this through the machine. And again, about a 1/4 inch pass. And we're actually not going to worry this time about going back to overstitch that. We'll see if it works after we get this done. And I'm going to press this a little bit more, turn that in a little bit more. And I'm going to hold these threads back here to actually pull it through. So I'm going to start that, and you're going to have to pull this to get it to go through there until it passes, right? And then I can continue sewing. Now, if you were doing a rolled hem like this on very fine fabric, or if it was on a curve, you would actually want to take your stitch length down to probably about 16 to 18 stitches per inch. A pretty small stitch. So just take your time with this and just kind of gently roll that as you go. Now you don't have to backstitch this one either if you don't want to. I'm going to give it a try. It's so tiny I worry about the fabric going down into this hole, but we'll give it a try. Seems like it was okay. And I'm just going to clip both these threads off. I'm not going to worry about coming back here because that was challenging, right? And remember, this double stitch here isn't going to show on the outside. Let's have a look at what it looks like on the outside. That looks pretty nice. And we did a pretty good job here. So now you have 4 hems. You have your 1/8 inch hem. You know how to get it started right up here. And then you have a 1/4 inch hem. You have a 3/8 hem, and you have a 1/2 inch hem. Let's give these one final press.